Welcome to Custom Homebuilders Solutions, also known as CHS, a job costing, full accounting, and profit management software designed specifically for the professional home builder. In previous videos, we've talked about how to set up groups, your cost codes, how to attach items to them, and how to use items, and how to set up default pricing for your various cost codes. Now I'm going to talk about, we also talked about setting up some default budget notes that will drop into a budget when these cost codes are loaded to a budget. But this video is going to be about setting up some defaults for POs, for when you start a PO for a particular cost code. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to framing labor, and under default notes on this framing labor, I'm going to click the default notes for POs. And we already have some loaded for framing labor. And what these notes will do by attaching these notes to the 3150 cost code is if I ever start a purchase order, it's going to look to see if there are some default notes that can drop into that purchase order that I have set up. So you can see how this would be really handy for the notes that would print on the PO for a particular cost code, so that you don't have to keep retyping those notes for every new PO. So you might set up some default notes. When you click in this box, you'll have some rich text things. You can bullet things or bold things, that kind of thing. And set up some default notes that you'd like to have print on your purchase orders. This is a sample from one of our builders here and some notes that they set up. And then after you make your changes, to something, maybe you decide this needs to all be bold for whatever reason. And let's don't make that bold because it kind of makes it spread out too far. So let's save this. You can also expand this window by grabbing hold of the edge of it and dropping down, dragging down so you can see everything you're working on. But let's save this. It thinks I made some changes. And the other thing that you can do is you can attach, instead of having all these notes if you want, or in addition to, you can upload a default PO attachment for maybe the scope of work that you'd like to have go along when you email your purchase orders. You'd like to have an attachment for what the scope of work is. And so if you have some PDFs of scope of work for various kinds of labor, or trades, or suppliers, I guess. If you want, you could attach that to this cost code, so that would drop in as an attachment. Let's go take a look at, I think we have a scope of work document stored for drywall that some builders shared with us. So let's go to drywall labor. It would be the scope of work for the drywall laborer. And let's do our PO defaults for it. We don't have any notes. But if I want to attach, I'll use this little upload file image, and then I'll use the folder. And I know I have that in my demo stuff, so let me navigate through my computer here and go to where I have demo stuff. And I know it's in my demo. So I think I have it under D for drywall. Wherever I stored that. Here we go. Drywall scope of work. And it's now been attached. And what will open is a thing. This is now going to be in our file cabinet. And you might want to just call it So once you go to your file cabinet, if you're ever looking for various files, you could look for the title or by file type. Let's see if we have a file type called scope of work. And we don't seem to have that. So let's set up a file type called scope of work, just because we'd like to be able to search for it that way in our file cabinet later. And you can do this tagging with anything that you upload, any documents or photos that you upload. And I did the little save icon after I did that add new one. So now it should be in our drop-down list, scope of work. So, and it has the cost code attached to it already, so I've tagged it how I like, and I could open it just to see what that document is and read it, etc. We won't spend our time reading this whole scope of work document that we just uploaded, so I'll close that and close that. And this was our tagging window for that. I needed to save my changes to the tags and close that. And now you'll see there's a file name in here so that you can see that there is an attachment, what's called a default attachment, so that when I start purchase orders for drywall labor, this attachment will already be there attached to it. That's why it's called a default for this cost code. So let's run over to the budget that we quickly set up in the previous video when we were talking about the master pricing and the budget notes defaults. Now we're going to take a look at creating a PO from the budget. So I already have it open, so let's click in the tab where I already have it open. And we're going to create, like I said, a new PO from the budget. And let's do it for framing labor. I'd like to show you this little trick instead of scrolling down. I'm going to put frame in here and search for keywords in the group headings. So there's framing labor. So let's go click on this framing labor in the budget. And I'd like you to notice, we already talked about how it dropped in a quantity and came up with an amount and a price, a unit price, etc. in the previous video. But notice over here that you can add a new PO. And it checks to see if there's already a PO made for this and says that there's not. So to continue creating a PO, click the continue button. And it already knows what job, so that's filled in. It already knows what cost code because we started it from the budget. And so we need to just come up with a vendor. So here's a framing laborer, so let's do a cost of framing. And it knows what cost type based on earlier in our cost code videos we talked about attaching a cost type to this cost code. So you can see that the cost type of labor dropped in. Also down here, everything from the budget dropped in. So, and it does it as a total. If we want to make it so that if we can look at the budget behind here, if there's some reason we want to make it be just like the budget, we can select a spec, which is the frame square feet. And if we remember that the unit price was 5, we could put that here. If you'd rather have that be what your PO is, and you can always look behind and see if it's the same amount. So we're creating a PO for this. But let's get on with, this is not super videos about doing POs. This is about just how we are using the default PO attachments. So here's the screen for doing other things about creating the PO and printing the PO, etc. And there's a box here for notes. It may have notes in it and it may not, but because we set up some default PO notes for this cost code 3150, these default notes dropped in. You can make any changes to these that you need, and that will just be for this PO if you click in the box and start making changes. Also, if it's empty, like say we just wanted to empty it out and we just wipe all this out, let's just do it. If I wipe all that out, it first wants me to save it for various reasons to show the buttons. Then I could click Insert Default Notes. And it's asking if I want to replace what notes I have there with those default notes, and then it's saying in red again I need to save it. You can also go from here to alter those default notes and attachments for that, like we saw before from the cost codes window. So maybe you realize there's some different stuff you'd like to have about the notes, and you could edit that here and then save it. So let's see what happens if we decide to print this purchase order. First of all, I already stored a signature that can be on here. So there's my funny looking signature. So let's print the purchase order. You'll get a window whether you can either email the purchase order to yourself, which is your email address supplied to CHS, or you can click to open the PDF of the purchase order. And if we scroll down, you can see that our quantity and unit price got in here like we wanted. And if you scroll down, you can see that those notes attached. Now this builder has a whole bunch of other, actually you can set up different styles for printing purchase orders, ones that say work order, purchase order, and various things like that, and various verbiage that you want after those notes that are particular to that purchase order. That's what was up there. So that's why he drops to a second page. He has quite a lot in here telling the user, and there's my signature on this purchase order. We would probably edit our default PO style notes to get rid of this thing that was done earlier for his signature, because the signature that I just did will show up down there. Anyway, that's the purchase order with those default notes, and we'll have more videos about purchase orders. Now I'd like to go back and create one more purchase order. First of all, let me delete this PO because I don't really want to have it here. I want to not have any POs when I start my PO videos. So let's close that. Now I'd like to go to drywall. So let's just type in drywall, see what we get on our budget. So we want to go to drywall labor, where we had made an attachment rather than notes that we want to have attached to POs created. So let's go ahead and just give this some amount for creating a PO. I don't know what drywall labor is going to be. We'll just make it $2,000 for whatever reason, and we'll submit that amount so that it can be used. And then this will be active over here for adding a new PO. Tells me it hasn't found any POs yet. And then we'll do the vendor inner city drywall. It also drops in the cost type again. It dropped in our amount, so we're ready to create a PO for that amount from the budget. And we're going to talk about the attachments. So if you notice over here, it says there's an attachment. It says PO attachments. You can click this button to attach something else to this PO. The reason you have attachments is because maybe you're going to email the PO to the vendor, and if you have attachments in file 1 and file 2 here, those attachments will be included. We don't need to, if we click the paperclip icon, we could review that PDF that is the scope of work, but we already did that. So let's do print or email this PO again. By the way, we didn't have any default notes, so CHS supplied this please contact us, but of course you could write some notes yourself about this drywall that's particular to this drywall, or where the plans are, or who knows what on your PO. So let's use my stored signature again, and let's email to the vendor with attachments. So you can see here it's opened a window to send an email, and it's sending it to the vendor email address, whatever's attached to that vendor inner city drywall. I have silly ones made. It's also copying it to the project manager for the job and to yourself. This is myself here. That's what I'm set up as. And it says our purchase work order is attached, and you might write something about scope of work is also attached. You might change your notes, because you can see that first of all, one of the attachments will be that PDF of the PO like we saw with framing labor, but this one will be the drywall one. You could have printed it first to review it before you do this email thing. And then that attachment for scope of work will be part of this email. It does say that you need to have a subject line, which you might say purchase order for drywall, or PO for drywall. Or something like that, and then you do send and save. But I'm going to do reset because I'm not really going to send this to anybody, and I'm going to close that. So that was to demonstrate how that attachment, that default PO attachment came in. And again, you could click this to set up default notes and attachments, and change what those defaults are somewhat, including that attachment. There are other places where you can deal with purchase orders attachments. And here we are back at the cost codes master. And I think my next video is about cost codes, because we're not done yet, is I'd like to talk about used, about deleting, about if you need to move this cost code to another cost code. And then we will get to the items that are behind cost codes. And I want to talk a little bit about, again, about not setting up your cost codes to be too detailed, and that you should not set up a builder fee as one of your cost codes. So those are videos to come. So thank you for watching this one.